Moto3. He's had that first podium back since injury, so just keep an eye on the number 18. What we see here, this is turns 1 into 2, and we have a look at David Munoz, the other half of Team Dave down there at Liquimoni Dynaval. Oh, look at the front end chatter there. Oh, he did very well. No wonder he was a little bit alerted to it. Wow, that front end was bouncing into the apex at turn 2.
Still set at 145.755 last time around, sorry. So it didn't affect him too much. Just some, front end chatter going into turn 2. Nice little slow-mo shots coming out of the very tricky turn 1 before you flick it left, click it down the gearbox, as we saw David Munoz doing there into the second corner. David Almanza continues on his way, looking really strong here as the number 22, lapping alone as well. This is very promising for tomorrow morning.
How many times have we seen David Almanza go out and do laps on his own? Very Max Keyless-esque. Coming to the line, David Almanza, is it a lap record this time around? Yes, it is, a 45.630, a brand new lap record here at Balaton Park Circuit in Moto3. And Almanza works his way through turn 1, and really brilliant stuff this from Almanza. He's out there, as you say, out on his own. He's not got any distractions. He's not got a reference as well. He's doing it all absolutely by himself. Good stuff. Let's see what Keyless can do. He's towing Munoz up to the line. Munoz goes second, just nudges Keyless back. So it's Liquimoni Dynaval Intact GP 1-2 at the moment, with 17 minutes on the clock still to go, and there's red sectors already in sector 1 for David Almanza, so the pace is very, very good out there this morning.
3 clear standouts so far in FP2. David Almanza, of course, David Munoz and Max Keyless towing around Munoz, but Munoz, of course, is quick enough to stick on the rear wheel of Max Keyless. Those 3 are setting a pace that no one else can really match so far. The only riders in the 145s. Obviously, we've got 17 minutes left of this session. This is Rico Samelo. He's not going to set a 145 this time around, but Samelo was very pleased with his job done yesterday on that 27 KTM. Enjoyed the circuit here for the first time, of course. Had a good feeling on board that motor, and rises to P6 in this session. He's directly into Q2 later on. So good showing yesterday, and so far this morning as well from the fifth.
Yeah, back into Q2 directly via Friday practice for the first time since Catalonia, so that was 12th that time around. He was 10th yesterday morning, 8th in the afternoon, so double top 10 so far this weekend for Rico Samelo. Obviously this is a new track for him, it's a new track for most people, or at least they only have 1 year on it, so a good leveller for the Finn. Almanza to the line again. Is it going to be another fastest lap? Not this time, but so consistent, of another 45.6 back to back, so Almanza's got some pace. We need to see Munoz and Keyless. They're on track together, just behind Almanza. They'll be coming to the line very, very soon, just coming through this final complex. Keyless and both him and Munoz are on course to improve time. Keyless' lap is going to go away because he touched the green. 45.4 it is, though, for David Munoz, who just moves those goalposts. Once again, we could be down to the 44s out. Maybe. Oh, he was backing it in. He was definitely backing it in, and he's backing it a bit too much. David Munoz, well, got away with that one, and lifts his visor up for a bit of fresh air. Very, very lucky there.
Nice little wake-up call for David Munoz this morning down into the tricky turn 1. You can see early doors that rear end is backing it in, sliding it in. The front end then tries to go away as well, and wasn't as close as it looked to a crash, I don't think, for Munoz. Not the ideal way to enter into turn 1, and now loses his toe, of course, to Max Keyless, but he won't mind too much. He's followed to the championship leader for a few laps now. I think he'll just regather his emotions after that one, and then go again for the rest of the 15 minutes.
Very fortunately, he was directly behind Max Keyless and not up the inside of Max Keyless when that moment happened there. So Munoz is all okay. He'll crack on with the rest of his day very, very soon indeed. Skips the chicane. We see riders often do that to save a bit of time in the session. As well, our drone picks him up coming through turn 17. This is Keyless. I think he's towing around his this is Almanza towing around his ex-teammate Adrian Fernandez. Almanza to the line, doesn't improve that time around. Where is Adrian Fernandez in this session? All the way down in 20th place. That's his championship position as well. So Adrian Fernandez 1.9 seconds off the pace at the moment. So I wonder if that penalty is just playing on his mind a little bit. I know he was very upset yesterday. Seems a bit better this morning, but it's going to be at the back of his mind. He'd had such a strong start to the year, as well, had Adrian Fernandez. was on the podium, of course, over in Jerez, his home GP.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's going to be very difficult, especially this weekend, for Fernandez to try and put that to the back of his mind. Hopefully, as we mentioned earlier, Fernandez can just try and get his head down. The team can get around him and support him as well. And we know Fernandez is ferociously fast, was leading on the last lap in Mugello as well, before just getting a little bit beaten up on the last sort of half of the final lap over in Italy. But pretty sure Fernandez will be able to put that to the back of his mind eventually and still fight for podiums and more wins this season and climb up the order in the overall standings. Eddie O'Shea, a more difficult day yesterday for O'Shea after what was his best weekend in Moto3 over at Mugello. Misses Q2 on a Friday for the first time since Jerez when he was P20. Eddie O'Shea did say yesterday, though, that he has definitely the speed to try and recover from yesterday. I mean, obviously getting into the top 4 in Q1 is going to be pretty difficult. You've got podium finishes for last time out, Hakim Dinish and Brian Ariati in there. You've got Joel Esteban, who was P5 last time out over in Italy as well. Scott Ogden's used to be in Q2. Adrian Cruz is always pretty quick as well. So it's going to be a good fight to get into Q2 later on in Q1. But O'Shea fancies himself, a lot of confidence gained from Mugello and the races leading up to that as well. As we see O'Shea in the gravel trap. Not quite sure where that is. Fortunately, the British rider is all okay. But as we were just talking up his chances later on this afternoon, O'Shea hits the deck, unfortunately.
Commentator curse number 1 of the weekend for Elliot York. Very, very frustrating there for Eddie O'Shea. Down at turn 5, that's a tricky right-hander. I mean, it is all pretty flat round here. That one is slightly downhill. But turn 5 catches someone else out, and this time it is Eddie O'Shea. I think we're going to get a replay now. This is going to be a front-ended McVeigh. Looks like he's pushing there, runs it into the corner, doesn't even make the 8 minutes.
Went very early, didn't it? Similar to Patama, got a different angle, of course. I can't quite compare it too much, but a very similar crash to the Indonesian a few minutes ago. Both riders all okay, but maybe a slight knock to the confidence heading into qualifying later. Fingers crossed the bike isn't too damaged and O'Shea can get back out for another couple of laps to shake that off ahead of obviously Q1 coming up later on. These two, though, are continuing on their way. Superb pace this from the 28 of Quiles and, of course, Almanza too.
Yeah, I was just about to say, Quiles, a 1:45, 3:85 has just moved those goalposts another little bit. David Almanza looking to do the same. He's through the third sector now. Just a tenth off of what Quiles has been able to do. And Adrian Fernandez looking at the back of his old teammate, not really able to keep with the number 22 at the moment. Coming through this 16 and 17 left-handers up the straights, Almanza will go. At the moment, he is third. This is going to keep him third unless he's done something special in the final sector, which he hasn't. And Quiles has likewise lost a little bit of time, but very, very consistent times from these two. They're not together on track, but they have been for a good portion of this season. The opening 2 Grand Prix, they were locked in combat and well up the road from everyone else. So I just wonder if we're going to get another Quiles Almanza show, just like in Buriram and Goiânia.
Yeah, Chuck Munoz in there as well. As things stand, if the race was to start in 20 minutes' time, it would be Quiles versus Munoz versus Almanza. Quiles backing it in nicely into turn 1, not quite as spectacular as David Munoz keeps it nice and straight into turn 1 before flicking it left into turn 2. But I'm particularly impressed with Almanza here, Kiko. Obviously, he missed the race last time out with severe tonsillitis, was in hospital for a few days as well. Hasn't had the ideal lead up into the Hungarian Grand Prix. First time here on a KTM as well. We know from this year that Almanza has gelled superbly with that KTM and embedded himself brilliantly into the new team. Intact are very happy with Almanza, but he's had his injury troubles this year, had illness last week as well, and he's arrived here at the circuit. Good save there from Alvaro Carpe into turn 2. But yeah, Almanza are really impressing here after a far from ideal lead up into the Grand Prix, and he's looking every bit as good so far as Quiles and his teammate Munoz.
He's impressed me this year already to come straight out the blocks with a brand new team, brand new bike, of course, back on KTM machinery for the first time since he was in Junior GP, and really getting on with it. Race winner straight out the blocks. He's made an absolute mess of turn 16 that time around, though, so Almanza's lap is going to go away from him this time. But yeah, leading most of that race in Buriram, leading out all of the race in Goiânia until he high-sided out, and then of course that fracture kept him out of Kota, top 10 in Jerez, back on form in Le Mans. got to say that David Almanza's pace has been there. It's been an unfortunate opening third of the season, even if it has been full of highlights. Oh, down on the ground. That's the 31, Vadjan Fernandez. His weekend goes from bad to worse. That's at turn 1. That's an easy mistake to make. That'll be hard under braking down there into the first turn. We're about to see this front end going and gone.
Yeah, very little warning as well there for Fernandez. As mentioned, turn 1, a lot of the riders were saying is a little bit more slippy compared to the rest of the circuit. Did get surfaced a few weeks prior to us getting going here at Balaton Park, but as you can see, Fernandez is all okay and back up on his way. No damage done really to the bike or rider, which is good news. But yeah, 3 crashes so far, all for Honda riders, clearly testing the limits, which is understandable, of course. And this is another rider who crashed yesterday, Alvaro Carpe, up to P4, but a little bit of time to make up if he wants to close in on the pace setters.
Also got to say, what we're seeing is Alvaro Carpe. Lost the front and saved it again. That's the second front end moment he's had on the left-hand side of that front tyre. So Alvaro Carpe goes building sandcastles. That's over at turn 10, I think, that one. So Carpe loops back on, and here he is. He's still out there. Saved 2 crashes in about 2 minutes. But if I could just close off from Almanza, the other thing that's quite impressive is he's in an English-speaking team, German-Austrian team. His German is not, it's about as good as mine, as in terms of it doesn't exist. And his English is improving, but he is very shy in English. So the fact that he's able to communicate what he needs to the crew chief, Stefan Kirsch, is, quite impressive as well at this early stage in his career in Moto3.
Yeah, for sure. Been really impressed with Almanza. Has adapted to new surroundings and the new bike as well, as we get some nice slow-mo shots of the riders doing their thing here at Balaton Park. Just returning to the Carpe chat after we've seen him have a couple of moments. I did say that the crash yesterday didn't really affect his confidence. We saw Carpe have a quick one down into turn 9, the corner before. We just had that big moment coming into turn 10, the part of the circuit where it gets really tight and technical through 9, 10, then the tight hairpin at 11 before you head into another chicane of 12 and 13 before it opens a little bit more through the fast kink of 14 and into the final sector. But Carpe was feeling pretty confident, said he has to make a couple of adjustments, was going to try a few things in free practice 2 this session, of course, before qualifying, but was happy to obviously get into Q2 directly, which is the most important thing on a Friday for everyone. I don't think anyone really cares about where they finish, as long as it's P14 or higher. You can obviously build on that and not have to worry about Q1, but don't count out Carpe. He's not showing the pace so far in this session, but was pretty confident that he can have a good result this weekend.
It's like we were saying though yesterday, Carpe came through from, what was it, the 5th row of the grid over in Barcelona, and managed to get himself on the podium. You can't be qualifying all the way down there this weekend here at Balaton Park. It's way too tight, it's way too technical. Slipstream is almost non-existent. The front straight and the back straight, that's about it, and the longest one's only 600 metres, so you really cannot rely on a big gaggle of riders in Moto3 round here like we saw in Mugello. You're gonna have to be at best on the front row, at worst front 2 rows. You really, even the 3rd row's a bit of a stretch too far around here.
Yeah, especially if, you know, the likes of Quiles, Munoz, Almanza are starting on the front 2 rows. You know, Carpe hasn't had an ideal time of qualifying in recent Grand Prix. Hasn't been on the front row since Jerez. Was 8th in France. Catalonia qualified P14, and Italy started from 12th. And that is Brian Ariarte in the kitty list.
It's finally happened for the Red Bull KTM IO team. They thought they'd got away with it, but Brian Ariarte, who's your most recent Moto3 winner, he was having a really tricky weekend, and that front end went so early. He wasn't even near the apex then. So Brian Ariarte pushing on, and let's go with the bike. Saves himself. That bike ingests a load of rocks. And, yeah, not the 5.6 for star that Uriarte was hoping for, I don't think there. But that's turn 12. That's on the run into the final chicane here, really, or the penultimate chicane. Not ideal for Brian Uriarte, but the track obviously in good nick. Everyone's pushing on, and because they're pushing on, mistakes were starting to creep in. So, yeah, not ideal in FP2 for a crash at any point, let alone in the final 5 minutes, which we are now in. We're watching Nicola Carraro, who at the moment is down in 23rd place and not even on a personal best lap, 2.5 seconds off the pace. Another Honda has just moved up into the top 8. That's Casey Gorman. So Casey Gorman going very, very well indeed at the moment. So keep an eye on the Irishman. Adrian Fernandez returns to the track and rolls out. He's obviously just had a bit of a once-over on the bike and nothing untoward this time around after that turn 1 tip-off, and goes through the scene of the crime to get on with the final 3.5 minutes of his FP2 session.
Yeah, we'll get one flying lap at this Adrian Fernandez to try and improve his time. Not that he'll be focusing on really setting a faster lap time, just heading out there and getting another lap on the boards. Casey Gorman, we rightly follow the Irishman. A really good day yesterday, P6 for the rookie. Was here last year in 58 colours, replacing the injured Luca Lanetta, and it was the scene of O'Gorman picking up his first points in Moto3. And obviously after yesterday it's clear that O'Gorman likes it around Balaton Park, and so he spent a lot of the time yesterday, he said, focusing on the race, but when it was time to engage time attack modes, the pace was there, the feeling was very good on that Honda. So fingers crossed for O'Gorman. He can have a strong qualifying and put himself in a good position to try and fight at the front. A podium at this stage looked pretty difficult for anyone apart from that top 3, but of course that can change going into Sunday, and of course qualifying as well.
Matteo Vitali's gone down. That looks like at turn 2. It's easy done, yes indeed it is. It's going to be a front ender, and about there, yeah, just lays it on its side and the front gives way, and Matteo Vitali, well, at least he's up on his feet. Not a problem for the number 18. Alessandro Tanucci's team are going to have a little bit of work to do then before qualifying. Nothing major. How many times have we seen turn 2? Cat riders out in all classes, Moto 3, Moto 2, MotoGP have got tight there last year in the Grand Prix. World Superbike, World Supersport. It's a real headache of a couple of corners here, and because everyone's so tentative through there, that's why we also see a lot of bunching and a lot of chaos down at turn 5, because it's the fastest top speed that we have here at Balaton Park. So just like I said earlier, keep an eye on that on that turn 5 come Grand Prix Sunday tomorrow, as we watch Alvaro Carpe working his way around and down towards, this is turn 13. Now we're looking at Ryusei Yamanaka and Cormac Buchanan. Cormac Buchanan's lap time has gone away. Buchanan's down in 17th anyway. Those lap times being cancelled for yellow flags. You see all the scrape marks out there. That's down in towards turns 12 and 13 and 14. A lot of scrape marks where the riders have been down.
Yeah, Buchanan, focusing on the New Zealander, was pretty happy with his pace yesterday and general feeling on the bike. Just missed out on the Q2 cut. We'll see his teammate Rocher Moulay directly into Q2, of course, but Buchanan was pretty pleased with how he was feeling in terms of long run pace yesterday. Didn't quite hook up the time attack lap at the end of practice yesterday afternoon, but the New Zealander was sounding pretty positive, which was good news.
Checkered flag being made ready. 45 seconds to go until we get the end of Moto 3 FP2. Valentin Proni's lap time has been cancelled due to track limits. I was just about to say about Max Keeler's 2 red sectors to the opening half of this Balaton Park circuit. So Max Keeler's is absolutely flying, and I'll tell you what, he's not going to quite get across the line in time to get another lap in, but Keeler's on the pace. Rocher Moulay out of shape coming through 16 and 17. It's a very strong Friday and Saturday thus far for the South African. In 8th place at the moment, gets another lap in as well as we work our way down towards turn 1. Keeler's, though, is in that final sector. He's coming through the final couple of corners. Now he's the number 28, and he is going to be moving the goalpost once more. Setting a new lap record, is he? Of course he is, a 45.148. The timing graphic gave him a 125 for a moment there. Not quite this time around for Keeler. That would be a step too far. Takes a checkered flag as well and knocks another quarter of a second off of his best lap time and the all-time lap record here at Balaton Park. Keeler's in a class of his own.
Yeah, that's a little gauntlet laid down by the championship leader, isn't it? After a disappointing Mugello, Keeler has come out firing here at Balaton Park, and to set a new lap record on 17-lap-old tyres that race tomorrow is 20 laps. So not quite full race distance, but not far off it at all. And for Keeler to set that sort of pace at 145.148 is pretty superb, and a bit of a message to say, catch me if you can. Of course, qualifying can change things if Keeler doesn't qualify on the front 2 rows. He's got a bit more work to do on Sunday, but that is a statement from Keeler.
Improvement from Cormac Buchanan. The New Zealander moves up into 14th place, so joins his teammate in the top 14 of FP2, but really could have done with doing that yesterday afternoon to get himself directly into Q2. In the end, Peroni moves through as well. That's 14th for Peroni, who's still just not quite there, is he, in the first thing in the morning, Friday or Saturday at the moment. So Valentin Peroni, a little bit of work to do down there for the Red Bull KTM Tech 3 squad, and 14th and 1.4 seconds off. We're taking Ruche Moodley up to the line now. As I said, great job by the South African. 8th place it is going to be at the end of this session. I don't see anyone else really on any kind of improved time, so I think that is about it. Quiles, Munoz and Almanza out as it was for the majority of this session, locking out your top 3 places, and the gaps don't really tell the story. Quiles did find something right towards the end there. Very, very impressive stuff.
Yeah, the last lap from Almanza was a 46.237, so that would still put Almanza in around the lower ends of the top 10, but Almanza's pace, not sure how much the 22 is pushing, of course, compared to Quiles, but Almanza's pace just dropped off slightly at the end. Quiles' pace dropped the other way into the realms of the lower 145. It's brilliant stuff from the 28.
Just want to talk about some riders outside the top 3 if I can. Carpe 4th, already through into Q2, of course, but a bit further down the field. Fernandez 5th there as well. Good session from Salmela and Moodley and O'Gorman, as we said. Rios back in the top 10. Further down the field, riders who would have wanted a little bit more, the likes of Vega Patama, Scott Ogden and Hakeem Danish, 20th, 21st and 22nd. Not an ideal start to Saturday for them.
No, work to do for some of the riders heading into this afternoon. Not so much work to do really for Max Quiles. Nico Stroll very, very pleased, and Quiles will be much more pleased sitting down in that chair compared to where he was 6 days ago when we saw him very frustrated in that exact position at the end of play on Sunday. But yeah, some work to do for the riders a little bit low down. Only 6 laps completed for Vega Pratama. That's unfortunate for the Indonesian. We saw him get back up on his bike, but clearly there was a bit more damage there than what met the eye to us and you guys at home. So fingers crossed, Pratama isn't affected too much. He doesn't have to worry about Q1. He was second yesterday, which is good news. But yeah, an interesting session. The gaps are quite big. A second from Brian Uriarte in P6 up to Quiles in P1. So good news for Quiles, not so good news for the riders who are chasing podiums and aiming for victories, of course, as well.
Yeah, not at all. It definitely keeps them interested, though, when they've got to have a look at Max Quiles, who is up at the top. I'm fairly sure we're going to see the 144 later on come qualified. Munoz in second, Almanza third. Carpe Fernandez, as I said, completing the top 5. Decent stuff from Brian Uriarte, who makes it Spain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 in this FP2 session here at the Hungarian GP for Moto3. Guido Pini there in 11th, just ahead of Marco Morelli. Adrian Crusoe's in 13th, and Valentin Peroni, a late lap, improving himself up to 14th place. Eddie O'Shea, Joel Kelso, just a little bit more difficult perhaps this weekend in Hungary than it was in Italy last time out. And what is going on with Ryusei Yamanaka? Down in 23rd place. He's the last KTM. He's 4 from the bottom of the Moto3 FP2 standings. And with that, Moto3 comes to a close. Moto2 is warming up. And as ever, that means that Lewis Sotheby has already moved into comms. He's joining El York up here. Moto2 FP2 on Saturday morning here at the Hungarian GP. Enjoy.
Good morning, everybody, from a beautiful sunny Balaton Park. Saturday at the Hungarian Grand Prix. This is round 8 of the MotoGP World Championship as we tick past the 1/3 point in the season now. Where has all the time gone? The MotoGP World Championship, which has very much been Aprilia dominated. Although the Noali factory, although they were playing a little bit of catch-up on day 1 yesterday, as Pedro Acosta set the way for KTM. As we've already seen in Moto3 this morning, it's looking very good for the World Championship leader, Max Quiles, who threw a bit of a marker down to his opposition in FP2 moments ago. And championship leaders laying a marker down would definitely fit the bill in Moto2 as well so far, as we get set for their third track session of the weekend. Well, practice yesterday has already determined who will move through to qualifying 2. And moving through with the greatest of ease was Manu Gonzalez. The World Championship leader by 34.5 points looks in red-hot form here in what is an increasingly hot Hungary. Gonzalez yesterday quickest by a couple of tenths of a second over last year's Balaton winner David Alonso, looking like he's in the mix and has at the very least half a chance of challenging for back-to-back Balaton wins. As far as the other World Championship frontrunners were concerned, though, very much mixed fortunes. Ethan Guevara, second in the World Championship. He is into Q2, 11th yesterday, but did have his fair share of problems. Third in the World Championship, Celestino Vietti. His problems had a much greater impact on his overall result. Vietti down in 18th place yesterday, and he is your heavyweight rider going through qualifying 1 later on. Certainly looks like Vietti's got pace to be much higher up the order than he ultimately was yesterday, but his motorcycle unfortunately wouldn't run in the latter stages, which left him in a spot of bother at the end of our opening day of running. Lewis Sotheby and Elliot York, as always, with you for Moto2 free practice action. FP2 on the way. Good morning to you, Elt. Good morning to David Alonso, who certainly has given his Aspar team, his fans, and more to the point, himself, hope that he could potentially challenge for back-to-back wins here.
Yeah, exactly. Good morning, mate. Hello to everyone tuning in, and hello to that young lad there sporting a very cool Ralph Fernandez number 25 cap. Good to see the fans here in Hungary, and good to hear and see David Alonso sounding a lot more positive than he has done in recent events. Mugello was going okay until Sunday, really, for Alonso. Tyre woes, unfortunately, disrupted his running over at the Italian Grand Prix and meant that he didn't score any points, losing crucial ground, of course, to not quite the runaway leader in Moto2, but he's stretching his lead somewhat, over 30 points now ahead of Ethan Guevara. But Alonso was Gonzalez's closest challenger yesterday and sounded positive, which is good news. No issues with the shoulder injury that he's been using. Not using an excuse, but it's been troubling him for the last couple of Grand Prix. So yeah, so far, so good for Alonso. Of course, won here last year, but he did say that, you know, the bike's a bit different. I'm a different rider. Everyone else is performing differently as well. So we can't really go off last year from what Alonso was saying in comparison to this season. But what we can say is Alonso has had a better Friday than he has done in recent events. Obviously, today, absolutely crucial for Alonso to try and qualify on the front row primarily, but top 2 rows is absolutely essential, you feel, if the likes of Manu Gonzalez, the likes of Philippe Salax we've just seen on the screens as well, both of those guys are sounding really positive as well. So Alonso qualifying crucially, hasn't qualified on the front row since his, well, it was a pole position that then got taken away, so he hasn't started on the front row since Brazil. Of course, did have pole position in Austin before it suddenly wasn't. So yes, a front row top 6 is absolutely essential for Alonso today, but first and foremost, FP2, 30 minutes of dialing in your Sunday pace.
Yeah, and with the conditions pretty similar to this expected now for the rest of the weekend, we're pretty hopeful and confident that we're going to have sunny, stable conditions, sunny through today and for much of tomorrow. These conditions quite representative of how the race is going to go tomorrow, so important to maximise this 30-minute session coming up. Both the Aspar riders pretty happy with life yesterday. Dani Holgado was 8th overall, as you saw there on screens, 5th in the World Championship, moved back ahead of his teammate Alonso in the points with his his podium finish last weekend. He was very nearly not a podium, of course, when he came under intense late pressure from Senna Agius. Holgado feeling much better here than he did last year when he finished in 9th place. Like David Alonso last year, it was a poor owning lap for Dani Holgado, and whilst David Alonso launched a rousing recovery from his poor lap, Dani Holgado didn't quite do the same in a very strong rookie season otherwise for the 96, and I think we're keen to see a trouble-free session and 30 minutes to really understand where this young man is at, El, because when he was on the racetrack and the bike was working properly, Ethan Guevara was pretty quick. We just didn't see enough of him yesterday.
No, exactly that. An outlap crash in FP1 set the tone, really, unfortunately, for Ethan Guevara. Yes, they did manage to qualify straight into Q2, which was good. And as you rightly point out, Lewis, when he was out there, when he was feeling better, he was quick and quickly rose to the top of the standings. Okay, got bumped down in the latter stages. Did say that a component on the handlebar broke in FP1. That's what caused this crash down at turn 5. But in general, and we saw this yesterday, Ethan Guevara getting very frustrated towards the end of FP1 and in practice as well. Saw him sat in the box for a bit too long as well. Was struggling with that front feeling on the brake, something he complained about over at the Italian Grand Prix as well, something that plagued his teammate Alberto Ferrandis in qualifying over at Mugello as well. So hopefully they're not linked. It seems like they potentially are, though. The Blue Crew, Pramac, Yamaha Moto2 boys and girls down there working super hard to try and eradicate those issues. You don't ever want any issues, mechanical or technical, but especially on the front end and the front brake, because if you have some issues on the front ends, you don't need me to tell you that you're not going to be feeling too confident, especially into the heavy braking zone. So fingers crossed Guevara can get a nice and easy 30 minutes under his belt without any issues, work towards Sunday, and then go for qualifying as well, because we want to see the top guys at the top of the standings. Guevara has good pace, just needs to have a smooth run of things today and try and forget about the front end issues that he's been experiencing in the last couple of Grand Prix.
We saw Celestino Vietti there, third in the World Championship, the number 13, very much an unlucky 13 yesterday. Was Chile. 18th he was overall. We did wonder, didn't we, as we were watching practice unfold live, why Vietti was sat in the pits just watching his name tumble down the order and ultimately out of qualifying too. He did ultimately have a very good excuse. Technical problems on his Boscoscuro in the latter stages kept him in the pits. So of course, crucial that he does get through that Q1 session, because Vietti will know better than anybody, having qualified down in 23rd here last year and then was taken out at the first corner, that he's got to get through that Q1 session. But it does appear, certainly from the evidence of yesterday, that Celestino is in a little bit of a false position.
Yeah, for sure. He was saying that. Yeah, so overall, it was a positive day, said the Italian, but some technical issues. Obviously, don't know exactly what they were. Teams are very, very tight-lipped. Tell their riders to do not say a word about what technical issues do arise. But yeah, some form of issue, unfortunately, for Vietti. Another Bosco rider who will be hoping that those issues are forgotten about, left on Friday and not coming into Saturday. But it is Q1 that boasts some fast riders, including this rider, Alonso Lopez. Joe Roberts is down outside the top 20. Denis Onchu, he was P10 last time out over in Italy. He was outside the top 20 as well. I've got Aaron Canet, who finished P15 yesterday as well. I'm not saying Vietti isn't going to get through. Of course, we've not got a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen, but fully expecting Vietti to be going through, as Lewis rightly mentions. It's not like he was down there in 18th because he was slow. It's because he had a technical issue and couldn't get out during the time attack. So Vietti, I think, with the experience he has, the back-to-back podiums so far this season, he's riding a bit of a crest of a wave, especially after, of course, standing on the podium at his home Grand Prix last time out at Mugello after a phenomenal Sunday performance. But he won't want to be qualifying down in P16. Different at Mugello, lots of slipstream, plenty of overtaking. It was a fast-flowing circuit, pretty much the exact opposite here at Balaton Park. Qualifying down in P16, you can forget about finishing on the podium.
Also Lopez, who we saw in the Grassini box a moment ago, also likely to be a big threat in that Q1 session. Lopez was down in 19th yesterday and struggled more than he expected. Here comes Tony Arbolino to his Fantic Calyx. Of course, we saw the two Fantics battling with each other for a place in Q2 last weekend in Mugello in that Q1 session. Well, they're both in Q2 this time. Arbolino 12th, Baltus in 13th place. FP2 is underway. 30 minutes coming up, where I'm sure some will see this as a bit of a dress rehearsal for qualifying. Certainly in the latter stages, we might see a little bit of that, particularly those who are going through Q1 and have been struggling with their time attack pace so far. Q1 includes this young man, Angel Piqueras, who we welcome back to Moto2 this weekend after breaking his femur and injuring his ankle back in Austin, Texas. And I think it's a relief to both of us to see him out on track this morning, given the circumstances of when we last saw him.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Angel Piqueras, a very warm welcome back and impressive, to be honest. Yesterday, finishing only 1.3 seconds off the new all-time lap record set by Manu Gonzalez yesterday. I don't think Piqueras or the team could have expected too much more than that. And Piqueras said yesterday that he was just thankful and very pleased to be back on the bike, and this weekend is all about gaining a bit more confidence and mileage. Of course, visiting here for the first time on a Moto2 bike.
And to escape that crash at turn 7 too.
And to escape that crash at turn 7 for sure, because it was a big one. Sort of the rear end came round and he barrel rolled a few times, of course through the gravel trap as well. So yeah, Piqueras gingerly got back up on his feet, understandably so. Even if you hadn't broken your femur and your left ankle a couple of months ago, you'd be getting up pretty gingerly from that off. So thankfully Piqueras is back out there, and of course just needs to have a clean weekend, get through it unscathed, as we mentioned yesterday, and then of course Bruno and Aston coming up, an exciting double header. Piqueras can maybe show a little bit more, but expectations of course from us, I'm sure fans and the team are not high, not because we're not expecting Piqueras to do anything because of his speed, but because such a tough injury to come back from. We've seen it with David Munoz, we've seen it with Fermin Aldeguer, to name 2 riders who have recently broken their femur, the biggest bone in your body, the worst one to break in terms of recovery time in your legs anyway. So yeah, a really tough injury come back for Piqueras, and it's actually fantastic to see him already back out there after a couple of months off. So yeah, fingers crossed for Piqueras, he can have a decent qualifying today, get through tomorrow, and then obviously progress from there.
It's a process, isn't it, for Angel Piqueras? In many respects, he's doing some testing in very public situations in the Grand Prix environment. So I think we have to give him a little bit of time to get himself up to speed and just build up that strength again. It was noticeable, wasn't it, when we saw him in the paddock earlier on in the weekend, now how thin his legs look, given that he is, I guess, having to try and bulk up for life in Moto2, but of course won't be able to do much training at all, given the nature of his injury to basically each end of his left leg. So we follow Denis Onchu now, coming through one of the several chicanes on this Balaton circuit. That was through turns 9 and 10, and now into the left-hand hairpin of 11. Onchu said, we know the problem at the end of yesterday, although he wasn't coming forth and telling us publicly what the problem was, but we do understand that it's a lack of turning generally on board that Boscoscuro that Onchu was suffering with. Much more positive, though, for his teammate Aaron Canet, who did miss out on qualifying 2 by 1 place and 0.2 of a second, but essentially used yesterday's session as a bit of a private, personal testing exercise, working on his own riding style, and finally starting to make some positive noises about his adaptation to the Boscoscuro again.
Yeah, the 44 said yesterday that he understood some things with his riding style and made a step forward in general. Of course, disappointed to miss out on a top 14. That would have been nice for Canet. He ended up missing out by nearly 0.2 of a second in the end. Jose Antonio Rueda, the rider who finished in P14. Great job from the reigning Moto3 world champion to gain automatic Q2 entry for the first time ahead of the 5-time Moto2 winner Aaron Canet. So yeah, we've heard this a couple of times before, haven't we, on a Friday? Canet feeling more positive, then we'll hear Onchu feeling more positive. Onchu had a decent weekend over the Mugello, as I mentioned, finishing inside that top 10. But it looks like this weekend it's Canet who's feeling more comfortable on that Boscoscuro. Eventually, both of them are going to work it out, and hopefully it's pretty soon, because it's a team that we want to see at the front. They're used to fighting at the front, and 2 riders who have race-winning pedigree and are constant threats to the podium in years gone by. So fingers crossed Canet and Onchu can figure it out and be more consistent soon enough, but Canet will be fancying his chances in Q1 to get into Q2.
In terms of what we saw more broadly yesterday, the sort of deeper analysis of practice, who's looking particularly good? Well, I guess the best way of judging that is looking at how many 140s everyone did. Of course, fastest lap time of the day yesterday, Manu Gonzalez, who was able to put in a 140.229. That was, of course, the extreme end of how quick they were going on. Soft tyres, low fuel, thinking about qualifying. If you look at the pre-weekend favourites, I guess Ethan Guevara would be one of them. He was able to put in 4 laps yesterday in the 1 minute 40s. Ivan Ortola, of course, chased Manu Gonzalez for a lot of the race in Italy. He was able to put in 4 himself. We saw 3 140s from Senna Aegis. We saw 1 apiece from Colin Vire, Danny Holgado, and also from David Alonso, whose sole 140 was the lap that put him ultimately up in second place. Danny Munoz was able to put in 4 laps in the 140s, but I think the stark reality for the Moto2 field and the hill they've got to climb if they're going to beat the World Championship leader this weekend is the fact that Manuel Gonzalez was able to put in 9 laps in the 1 minute 40s. He is not just faster than the field over 1 lap, he can repeat it and repeat it.
Yeah, a bit of a mark laid down, wasn't it, yesterday for Gonzalez? The first time that he's topped FP1 and practice in the afternoon as well, and just looks so comfortable. He said his main strength yesterday were these tight chicanes. He said he's got a super agile and a fast bike through the tight, sort of flicking it left and right, or flicking it right then left. He's feeling super comfortable. Actually, he mentions that sometimes he's almost too quick because the front end rises on a couple of occasions, and you don't want that when you're changing direction. It can easily cause a crash, but Gonzalez was oozing confidence yesterday after back-to-back wins in different circumstances, first in Catalonia, then in Mugello, where he handed it to everyone basically, didn't he? It was the clear runaway victor over in Mugello, and has landed at Balaton Park in a completely different layout, a track that he didn't win at last year. Was in that fantastic victory fight that it was eventually won by David Alonso. Diogo Moreira, of course, in that battle as well. Gonzalez eventually finished P3, but yesterday Gonzalez was very confident and looked like the Gonzalez we've seen this year, mainly on a Sunday. The Gonzalez we saw last year on a Friday a lot was the Gonzalez we saw yesterday, and he's sounding like he's got a fantastic base setup now on that Kalex Triumph machine. And as you rightly pointed out, the pace yesterday was pretty sublime from Gonzalez, and he is going to be, as always, so far this season, a very tricky customer to beat for the chasers come Sunday. We're going to learn a little bit more in the final 20 or so minutes in this session. The pace at the front is looking pretty tight at this moment, but the rider on your screen, the World Championship leader, of course, a lot of things going on in the background, a lot of noise about his future as well. He's trying to ignore all that, and when he puts his visor down, he isn't thinking about that one bit. He's fully concentrating on trying to win this Moto2 championship. What will come will come. If it's MotoGP or not, he hasn't got any control over that in terms of off the bike. What he can do is continue to win races on the bike, and he's looking well on course to be able to challenge for that again this weekend.
He was on pole position last weekend on his way to victory in Mugello, and it feels like qualifying 2 later on. Well, Q1 and Q2, particularly Q1 for the likes of Celestino Vietti, are going to be the most important of the season. I spoke to Pecco Bagnaia yesterday around the MotoGP matters, and he said for him, season Q1, it's the most important Q1 of the season for him. If you qualify poorly around here, that's with due respect to what David Alonso did last year when he came from 11th on the first lap to win the race. It's generally so difficult to overtake around here. I was watching this man Danny Holgado a lap ago when he was up behind Luca Lanetta's Speed RS Boscoscuro, and he tried to lunge at him up the inside into turn 15, the final of the chicanes on this lap. And just by purely trying to outbrake him and get alongside him, he couldn't get it stopped, had to run straight through the chicane. So difficult to actually get alongside, because the straights from one chicane to the next aren't particularly long here, so it's not easy to pick up the kind of slipstream, get a run on someone to get alongside. So you do really have to force it for a long way back, which makes it very difficult to get your bike stopped into these sort of chicanes. So qualifying and getting yourself on the front 2 rows as a minimum, ideally on the very front row, perhaps more important around here than at any other circuit through the calendar.
Yeah, you'd say so. And as you mentioned, speaking to Pecco yesterday, and a lot of the riders saying that qualifying round here, as we know, to be honest, wherever we go, but especially around a circuit like this, a lot of the riders do enjoy. It has to be said. It's not everyone's favourite, of course, from probably a fans and journalist perspective, but a lot of the riders do say, including MotoGP riders, got to say, apart from Pecco Bagnaia, who was very forthcoming in not enjoying this Balaton Park circuit, to put it mildly. But a lot of the Moto2 and Moto3 riders yesterday were saying how much they enjoyed it. Of course, Moto2 riders, some of them here for the first time. Senna Regis, one of those as well. He was inside the top 10 yesterday. But qualifying, for sure, absolutely crucial. And you've got probably about 3 proper overtaking opportunities. One, is into turn 1, of course, where Barry Bautis is just moving through, and the current pace setter in this session, Danny Holgado, is just moving through there. And then you've got turn 5, the end of the back straight, and then you've got probably turn 9, where the race was won by David Alonso this time last year, coming out of the fast section of 7 and 8. Before the sort of first of 3 chicanes towards the end of the lap. And the rest is sort of one line. You could argue turn 15 is a potential overtaking opportunity as well. But looking at the track and looking from the races last year, only 3 real opportunities, and even into turn 1 you've got to get it absolutely spot on, because the heavy braking zone down to less than 100 k's per hour, which is where centre edge is now, and you can easily run wide, and the riders can easily get a cutback through turn 2 as well. So a tricky track to nail and a tricky track to pass on as well.
What's going to make turn 1 particularly difficult as an overtaking opportunity is it's been freshly resurfaced. They resurfaced a couple of areas of this Balaton circuit very, very recently as since the World Superbike round, which was less than a month ago here in Hungary. So turn 1 and turn 6, which is just on the exit of the second of those real overtaking opportunities, the hairpin of 5. It's quite greasy and quite slick through there, not because they've done a bad job with the resurfacing, but because it is quite fresh surfaced tarmac, so it hasn't really been treated properly, hasn't quite bedded in yet. And so we did see a few MotoGP riders yesterday speaking of that, about how easy it was to potentially tuck the front and going hot into turn 1. Jack Miller said that, you know, again, if you're starting deep in the pack, it's going to be a real problem getting through there. A problem for Alberto Ferrandis down at turn 11, who's had a bit of a mishap. He's in along that penalty loop there. Not the moment that I wanted to talk about Alberto Ferrandis, because he did have his best day in Moto2 yesterday. A bit of a blot on his coffee book this morning, that.
Yeah, Tony Arbolino did well to not be a little bit further around the corner, otherwise he might have been taken out by a stricken Ferrandis. A simple enough crash down there at turn 11. We saw lots of front-end crashes in Moto3, didn't we? Didn't see too many crashes yesterday in different conditions, of course, but obviously in FP2 the pace has hotted up, the riders are more comfortable, conditions are better, so the riders feel like they can push. But yeah, plenty of front-end crashes. I think we had 4 or 5 in Moto3. That's the first one in Moto2, and Ferrandis, of course, has to take his bike to the service road to try and restart it. Doesn't look like there was too much damage, which is good news, but Ferrandis did have a really good day yesterday. Was saying he was fast and comfortable straight away in FP1, and that carried through into practice in the afternoon as well. Had a little bit of a helping hand, it's got to be said, for Manu Gonzalez, but no matter who you've got in front of you, you've still got to put down the lap and stick with Gonzalez, and that's exactly what Ferrandis did. So take nothing away from Ferrandis. P5 is probably where about he was yesterday, so a real top job from the rookie to be the lead Bottasguro rider yesterday.
Yeah, and his best lap, even though he was behind Manu Gonzalez, wasn't exactly on brand new fresh tyres either. He'd put a few laps on those Pirellis by the time he set a 140.675 to go 5th. Second Q2 appearance for Ferrandis, second in the last 3 Grand Prix, in fact, for the rookie, as Danny Holgado's sending a bit of a message here. Don't forget about me this morning. We've already seen the Moto3 all-time lap record broken this morning. At Moto2, as Holgado sets the fastest lap of the weekend and the fastest Moto2 lap ever here.
Good day so far for Aspar after Max Quiles topped Moto3 FP2, and Holgado is currently over 6/10 clear of Barry Bautis, and the rest, of course, chasing in this FP2 session in Moto2. A nice little marker laid down here as Colin Vire then reduces the deficit, but still not far off 4/10 shy is Colin Vire to his fellow sophomore rider Danny Holgado. So this is really impressive so far from Holgado. Had a decent day yesterday, was quite enough though down in P8. He said he was feeling a lot better than he was here last year. But clearly in this FP2 session they've either found something, or he's just feeling a lot more confident in the less windy conditions. Should mention that yesterday that a lot of the riders were complaining about the wind that picked up yesterday. David Alonso was one of those, Manu Gonzalez was another one, who were both suggesting that it made things very, very tricky in the afternoon session compared to the morning session. Setups were needed to be changed, and it was difficult coming into some sections where the wind was really causing a bit of havoc. So less wind today, and clearly that's helping Holgado, and obviously overnight they've done some homework in the Aspar box, and the 96 is looking very good here.
Well, his teammate David Alonso was shortcutting the chicane down at turns 9 and 10. Which, as El mentioned earlier on, was where Alonso secured victory last year with that lunge on Manu Gonzalez. He was quite often overtaking into turn 1-2, but the rear tyre of his Calyx nearly overtook the front there. You could see the rear completely locked up as he was pleading that bike to stop before he ended up into the gravel trap. Yeah, turn 1 last year where we saw him overtake Jake Dixon. We also saw him overtake Diogo Moreira. And then turn 9 on the very last lap from quite a long way back to lunge through Manu Gonzalez, and not necessarily criticising David Alonso here because he has been unlucky, but I think you'd have got very long odds if you'd said when David Alonso secured victory on the final lap here last year that we'd arrive back at Balaton nearly a year later and that's still his sole victory in the class.
You wouldn't have found anyone, I don't think, in the paddock and fans watching in around the world as well that would have thought that was be Alonso's last victory. As we've mentioned before, and as Lewis rightly picks up, that it's not all his fault. He's had some things out of his control, especially this season, that has made him